Nothing seemed wrong. The airbag was designed to protect occupants at the most critical moment of an accident. For decades, it represented one of the greatest advances in automotive safety. But in some vehicles, this system failed. Not due to a natural disaster, not due to misuse, but due to an internal error within the component itself. This documentary records the case of the airbag recall involving Takata, considered the largest recall in the history of the automotive industry. This is only one file within a larger archive. Other cases are already recorded. For decades, the airbag was treated as a safety standard, a system present in millions of vehicles across different countries, produced by different manufacturers. Its operation seems simple. Detect the impact, inflate in fractions of a second, reduce the risk of serious injuries. For the driver, for the passenger, for the industry, nothing indicated that this system could represent a danger. The component responsible for this function operated outside the user's field of view, sealed, integrated into the steering wheel or dashboard, without periodic maintenance, without external signs of wear. For those behind the wheel, there was no reason for suspicion. For the automotive industry, the airbag had already fulfilled its role in countless tests and certifications. It was considered a reliable system. And precisely because of that, the risk remained invisible for too long. At the center of this system, there was a critical component. Small, metallic, installed inside the steering wheel or the vehicle's dashboard. It was responsible for initiating the airbag reaction. This component is known as the inflator. Its function was clear, controlled, to precisely determine the exact moment of activation. When an impact was detected, the inflator was supposed to generate gas in a calculated amount, in fractions of a second, no more, no less. This process needed to occur in a stable, predictable, and confined manner within the system. The driver could not see this component. The passenger had no contact with it, and there were no external signs that something might be wrong. For those using the vehicle, the inflator simply existed. Silent, hidden, and considered safe. It was at this point that the risk began to form. The problem was not in the idea of the airbag, it was in the internal mechanism of the inflator. Inside this component, a chemical reaction was responsible for generating the gas that inflated the airbag. This reaction needed to occur in a controlled manner. But under certain conditions, this did not happen. The material used inside the inflator could degrade over time. Heat, humidity, environmental variations, common factors, difficult to perceive, present in many locations. With this degradation, the reaction ceased to be stable. Instead of releasing gas at the correct rate, the process became unpredictable. Internal pressure increased beyond what the metallic housing was designed to withstand. The result was not a controlled activation. It was a failure. The inflator ruptured at the moment of activation, turning the component itself into a source of failure. None of this was visible before activation. No warning, no prior notice, no external signal. The system appeared intact until the moment it was required. When the system was activated, the expected result was simple. The airbag should inflate and absorb part of the impact. But in the affected cases, this did not happen as intended. At the moment of activation, the inflator ruptured. Metal fragments could be projected along with the airbag. In documented technical tests, these fragments were described as being launched at speeds comparable to a projectile. What should have been a protective device became a risk event. This failure occurred in fractions of a second. No time to react, no possibility of correction. For the vehicle occupant, there was no perceptible difference before the impact. The system appeared to function until the final moment. It was in this way that the failure left the technical environment and resulted in real consequences. Not as a hypothesis, not as a laboratory test, but in real-world use. It was at this point that the problem ceased to be merely an engineering failure and became a concrete danger. Over time, it became clear that the problem was not restricted to a single vehicle. Not a single model, not a single market. The same component was present in vehicles from different manufacturers, produced in different countries, sold on a global scale. As more cases were analyzed, the pattern repeated itself. The inflator, the same mechanism, the same failure. What initially appeared isolated began to reveal a much larger dimension. Millions of vehicles were potentially affected. Not by an individual decision, but by an entire chain of production, supply, and technical validation. It was at this moment that the case stopped being treated as a localized issue and became recognized as a systemic event, requiring action on an unprecedented scale. Regulatory authorities, manufacturers, and suppliers were forced to respond. The airbag recall involving Takata became the largest recall in the history of the automotive industry. not only because of the number of vehicles involved, but because of the complexity and the global extent of the problem. A single component, installed in millions of vehicles, capable of generating impact on a worldwide scale. That is how an internal invisible failure became a historical landmark in automotive safety. This file documented how a safety component designed to save lives became a systemic risk. Not due to an isolated event, not due to a visible failure, but due to an internal issue invisible to the user present in millions of vehicles. The case analyzed in this file showed how technical decisions, environmental conditions, and industrial scale can converge into real consequences. This was not merely a product recall. It was a historical landmark in how the automotive industry came to address risk, validation, and systemic responsibility. Other files are already recorded. Subscribe to the channel to follow the next documentaries.